Class is in session featuring me, a real 90s teenager. We're going to talk about 90s hair and makeup, how it really was, not just how people think it was. There is really only one thing you need to nail a 90s look, and I'm going to tell you exactly what it is in a minute. As it turns out, some people are interested in what me, Helen, former 1990s teenager, has to say on the subject of 1990s makeup. I've made a few TikToks, and some of them are really popping off. I'm going to share them with you. Let's get into it. First off, before I forget, be sure to sign up to my newsletter, helenavery.substack.com, where I talk about 90s makeup. Comes once a week right into your inbox. Okay, so before we get deeply into it, let's first talk very briefly about 1990s hair. 1990s hair is very different from the hair you would see now, mostly because it was very, very messy by today's standards. If you look at old photos of like Winona Ryder, who is a 90s icon, I know we know her from Stranger Things now, but back then she was just like a real it girl. She had really messy hair. If you look at Drew Barrymore back then, if you look at pretty much anyone, there was always like a messy part going on. My mom always used to say to me, aren't you gonna fix your hair? Because my part was completely zigzagging in every direction you can imagine. And I was like, no, this is the look. But you know, different generations, different hairstyles. What can I say? So if you're really struggling, and I do see this sometimes on TikTok and on YouTube, to really nail that 90s look, like it looks quite right, but it's not perfect. It's usually the hair is just too neatly done and it looks too modern. So mess up that hair, mess up that part. Your hair could be puffy, textured. We didn't really use flat irons back then. We would just blow dry our hair and go. And you know, we had the hairstyles to show for it. Talked about 90s makeup. What about 90s hair? 90s hair was typically, by today's standards, really messy. Messy part, textured on the ends, chunky highlights in 2 or 3 colors, and mostly side parts. You would rarely see a middle part. Okay, let's now talk about the one product that you need if you really want to nail the 90s look and you don't want to spend a lot of money and you don't want to think about it too hard. That product is Revlon's Toast of New York lipstick. Believe it or not, they still make this iconic 90s shade. If you say Toast of New York lipstick to someone like me who was a teenager in the 90s, they're gonna know what you were talking about, whether or not they wore it themselves. Toast of New York was my sometimes color. My actual real favorite color back then was Wine with Everything, because then, as now, I have always leaned more to the berry tones, whereas Toast of New York is a sort of orangey reddish brown, which I don't feel plays as nice with my skin tone, but plenty of people out there love it. And Toast of New York is one of those lipsticks that's suitable for, I'm gonna say, like a sort of classic red. Toast of New York, if you're into that sort of brownish look, is suitable for maybe like 9 out of 10 people. It is just a really easy to wear lipstick for pretty much everyone. I'm gonna put a link down below. You can't get it everywhere, but I will put a link down below. I think Ulta still carries it. Go down, check it out in the description box. Revlon lipsticks are amazing. Don't sleep on Revlon lipsticks. You know, if you wanna pair this up and get another like lipstick at the same time, get Fire and Ice. That's a beautiful classic red. I've made a video about that here on this channel, actually a couple of them here. You can watch that too if you wanna see why you should just get a Revlon red. You don't have to spend your money anywhere else. Links down below, and I'll link those videos up at the end of this video. I'm not wearing makeup today. I used to apologize for not wearing makeup. I decided I'm not gonna apologize for not wearing makeup anymore. Listen, once you get to your 40s, you get into kind of a journey of trying to accept your face as it is, and that is what I'm doing right now. And part of that is not being afraid to film myself without any help from makeup and complexion products. Let's watch this video that I have on TikTok and we'll talk about it. This one is doing really well. Let's see. Okay, real teenage makeup in the 90s.
These were the only 5 items of makeup I ever wore as a teenager in Toronto in the 1990s. I always started everything off with my MAC foundation. Now in Toronto, we were a little bit ahead of the MAC makeup game because we had a MAC counter very early on, because MAC is a Canadian company. The second thing I used to wear would be just eyeliner. I never did anything to my eyebrows, just plucked the hell out of them. The third and fourth things were lip liner and lipstick. Also MAC, Twig, and Spice. If I didn't have money for that, I'd buy something from Revlon. My colors back then were Toast of New York and Wine with Everything. And I remember my girlfriends also liking, I think, Coffee Bean and Rum Raisin. Those are the big shades for the 90s. The fifth thing was pressed powder from CoverGirl. And we all had pressed powder compacts with us, or a lipstick and a lipstick holder that had a mirror, because we had to reapply lipstick. That was one thing that we did bring with us to school, to reapply, because we didn't have cell phones back then. So there wasn't any like selfie mode to put your lipstick on in the middle of class. I wasn't big on mascara, but CoverGirl was the name of the game back then.
Right. So yeah, that was 1990s makeup. You just didn't have a lot in your kit. Now, I did write about what exactly I had in my makeup kit. Go ahead and check out that article that I had mentioned. But just very generally, I'd have like one foundation and I would use it all up before I would buy another one. Just there was no world in which you had like 5 different foundations. Like that would have seemed utterly ridiculous to us back then. And many women only, and people that wear makeup only have one foundation. That is very normal. I think those of us that love makeup see that as absolutely crazy now because we want to own everything that comes out. Twig was the lip liner, Spice was the lipstick. These are MAC products that were huge. These were 2 colors that everybody had. This is when you sort of maybe graduated from the Toast of New York and you wanted to step up your game a little bit. You would go to MAC and it was just full of teenagers and like makeup artists. I've got another short video that has really also been taking off, and that is about MAC. MAC is Canadian, and back in the day, it was a vibe, a quiet vibe, that is. When MAC first opened in Toronto, it's almost impossible to describe how quiet the makeup scene was back then. There was nobody there. There might have been like your odd teenage girl, such as myself, and maybe a makeup artist. That is who MAC served. If you were over 30, you did not shop MAC. You shopped like Estee Lauder or maybe Chanel if you had more money, but not MAC. That was not considered a brand that anyone over 30 would wear. People also didn't care about makeup the way we do now, and we certainly did not know how to put it on. I remember the counter staff being really, really passionate and really, really helpful. Now, the 90s has a real reputation for us wearing foundation colors that were much too light. This is actually a pressed foundation from MAC, a vintage one. And I don't know if it's so much that it was too light because they were actually really good at matching skin color at the MAC counter. I think it's that we didn't wear any contour or anything like that. The look was matte, which made it look lighter. Right, so another thing about the MAC counter, then as now, I'm sure you've seen it now when you've passed by, they serve some looks. Back in the 90s, it was incredible the looks that they were serving because back then, as you've seen, maybe here, I've made videos about it or seen other people, or maybe you remember yourself, the look was quite plain. Like in the 90s, it was just very, very matte. Lipstick had a real moment back then, but you just really mattified your face, didn't have a lot of dimension. We didn't really know how to do a cut crease, any kind of crazy looks, but back then you would have seen like arsenic green eyeshadow and like extreme eyebrows, and like you would have seen contouring on the makeup artists at the MAC counter. They were artists, and so they really brought that level of artistry to your everyday sort of teenage gals like us. Not that we were being artists, but they were just so kind and patient, explaining what things did, giving us lots of like very generous samples to try. They had such a passion for makeup, and they were just like really down to earth at the Toronto MAC counter, as I recall anyway, at a department store called The Bay at Yonge and Bloor, which is no longer there. Actually just went out of business not all that long ago, but that was the hot spot for the neighborhood kids that I went to school with. We would just like walk up there on our lunch break and try on lipsticks. Back then you couldn't just grab a lipstick and try it. Like the staff had to help you. They had to like spritz it down with rubbing alcohol, like soaking wet, like as if it was the carrier of the bubonic plague. They would wipe that off with a tissue, and then they would hand you the bullet of lipstick, and that's how you would try it on. None of this stuff at Sephora where you just get to touch everything. They touched everything. You were not allowed to touch anything back then at MAC. So this is a really quick video on a 90s real makeup tutorial, how I would have done my makeup back as a teenager. You can see a longer version of this also in a video I've done here that was up a little while ago, but let's see what I said here. This one went viral. I was a teenager in the 90s, and this is exactly how I used to do my makeup every single day in high school. Use the most matte foundation you can find. This is Estee Lauder Double Wear. Apply with fingers. Makeup brushes were not really a thing quite yet. Otherwise, you could use a white latex makeup sponge, kind that you can still get at Sephora for samples. Make sure you go down your neck. Just joking. Ended at the jawline. That's what we used to do. We never blended. Mattify some more. Go into your T-zone with either pressed powder. This is MAC's Studio Fix Pressed Powder Foundation. So very, very matte. There's no dimension in the face in the 1990s. Use eyeliner, smudge it, and make sure you only go to the midway point of your bottom lid. I don't know why we did this way. Oprah told me to do it, so I just did it this way forever. Not sure why. Dark lip liner, a brown red lips. From Revlon, finish it off. Make sure you have butterfly clips in your messy hair. Yeah, so messy hair, as I talked to you guys about, that's actually not a Revlon red or a Toast of New York. That's actually 2 lipsticks that I blended together to get the kind of look of the 90s, which is a really brownish red. You can do this yourself if you don't want to buy Toast of New York or like any of these sort of brown, red 90s-ish shades. All you need is 1 brown and 1 red lipstick. If you have those, you can make it yourself. Just put on a bit of red and then layer a lot of brown over it. Get out a brown pencil, like maybe brow pencil if you have that. That's what I'm actually using in here, and use that to line your lips, and boom. You know, is it the cleanest, nicest look? Maybe not, but it's fine if you're just like serving a look for like, I don't know, a costume party or something like that. But if you like Toast of New York, you should. Like Revlon stuff is very affordable. And I don't know what's going to happen to Revlon. They might go bankrupt. I don't know. They're supposed to be out of bankruptcy proceedings, but I feel like they're on shaky legs. So if you like Revlon products like lipstick, you know, you can buy a bullet of lipstick. It will keep and keep and keep. Like, don't be afraid to stock up a little bit on lipsticks. They don't really go bad. So all that talk about 90s makeup got me sort of walking down memory lane, and some people asked some questions on TikTok. I also posted these on Instagram. They did pretty well as well, and some of them are here on YouTube Shorts as well. But it really got me into thinking about like our approach to luxury brands in the 90s, and that was another interesting path to walk down. So let me roll that video now, and we'll see what I had to say on that. 90s department store makeup and whether I would have shopped there as a teenager. Let's start off with Chanel, the most expensive one. Absolutely no way this was my grandmother's brand. Like, I wouldn't have never shopped at Chanel except for Vamp nail polish, which Uma Thurman wore in Pulp Fiction, became a cult hit and had a waiting list of 1 year. Lancome, no, this was like your older auntie's brand, maybe your mom's brand. Okay, I'm just gonna pause there because I made a mistake. Ooh, they came for me on TikTok. Apparently, that's just an urban legend. Vamp was not worn by Uma Thurman in Pulp Fiction. She was actually wearing another color, and not till about a year after the movie came out, or the principal photography and filming was done for the movie, did Chanel release Vamp. That's apparently not what she's wearing. I have not found any primary sources to corroborate this, but you know, the makeup historians out there assure me that, and there are articles that have been written about it, that basically what happened was Pulp Fiction was shot in 1993. Vamp did not hit shelves until 1994, and it's not as if Chanel gave like Vamp to the Pulp Fiction like hair and makeup department or something like that ahead of time. I guess it's just a coincidence, or maybe they were inspired by the movie. I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but they did not happen at the same time. Movie first, Vamp nail polish second. Estee Lauder, absolutely not. Would have not have shopped there as a teenager until the year 1997 when they came out with Double Wear Foundation. Clinique, absolutely not as a teenager. They used to wear like lab coats like a doctor would wear, and believe it or not, that was not an approachable vibe when you're 15 years old. Hard Candy. Easy to forget this one, but they had the most amazing nail polish colors, and the nail polish bottles used to come with a plastic ring that was just so cute, and it was always sold out. You could never get the color you wanted. MAC makeup, of course, shop there a lot. Right, so our approach in the 90s, and if you're from the 90s, I'm sure you can appreciate and you can remember this, our approach to luxury goods were not the same as they are right now. When I was 16, 15, 17, 18, I didn't want to look any older than about 18, maybe 19, to like get into clubs and stuff like that. Like that was the goal. It's not like today where I think a lot of youngsters want to look older than they are. And I don't mean like they want to look like old enough to legally drink. I mean, they want to look old enough to pass for like they're in their 20s, but that was not a vibe. Like teenage culture was very strong in the 90s, and I'm not saying it's not now, but our aspirations to how we wanted to look were very different. Like counterculture was very important in the 1990s. Nobody in my high school would have wanted to wear a Chanel bag, like a quilted bag with a logo on it. Like that was looked on as very fuddy-duddy, like old. And nobody wanted to be old in the 90s. We only wanted to be just maybe a little bit older than we were. We did not aspire to look 25. We did not aspire to look like anybody other than a teenager. And if you think about the clothes, it kind of reflects that. There are a lot of baby doll dresses, baby tees, a lot of pastels. You know, we think of the 90s as being this sort of edgy Kate Moss kind of grunge era, but for a lot of us who were teenage girls back then, we were into the pastels. I used to wear pastel barrettes. I had pastel t-shirts. Very, very influenced actually by Courtney Love. She'd wear like knee-high socks. She'd wear like Mary Jane shoes. She had a sort of doll-like kind of look that a lot of us were very inspired by in the 1990s. So the looks were different. Like we were quite happy to be a teenager in the 1990s. I don't feel like we were aspiring to be like an influencer. All right, last of all, this one was doing well as well for me. Makeup today that would have confused me in the 1990s. This was a fun one.
Makeup trends from today that would have confused me from the 90s. Applying foundation with a brush. Contour. I think I could have understood cheek contour because we all wanted to look skinnier back then, but forehead contour would have completely baffled me. Anything to do with filling in our eyebrows. It was our goal back then to have no eyebrows, so we basically plucked them all out. False eyelashes, because that's something we associated with the 1960s. Blush. The look was really, really matte. No blush. One thing that hasn't changed though, lipstick. Let me know what I missed.
Yeah, so the 90s was all about lipstick, right? Toast of New York, like I said. You don't need a lot. Like I see people just doing way too much when they're trying to recreate these 90s looks. You know, you don't really need to brush up your eyebrows. You definitely don't need to fill them in. We did not fill in our eyebrows. All we did was just pluck them to smithereens and then ignore them after that. Like you did not use makeup inside of your eyebrows, not that I can recall. Anyway, blush was another thing we didn't really touch. That was considered kind of, again, like Chanel, something more for your grandmother, right? Something that you might have seen on her dresser and been like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that. The look was very one-dimensional, very inspired by Kevin Aucoin, the makeup artist, who really blanked out the face. You would just basically just be a pair of nostrils and like eyes. The rest of the face was completely matted out. Again, as I've said before, you know, there wasn't really this way to transmit knowledge from one person to another. You're really very limited in how you could get knowledge from people. Like maybe the lady at the drugstore counter would tell you, not show you. She couldn't really show you anything. There would maybe be some testers out, but this was not a time when people would demonstrate, like at the drugstore, how to do things. She would just maybe tell you about what products you could use. So there was that. That was about it. Like the makeup books themselves tended to be older and completely out of date, you know, until Kevin Aucoin released his book. There just wasn't a lot of ways to get at makeup knowledge. There was no YouTube, as you know. There was no TikTok. Obviously, Instagram didn't exist. It was very much like you told your friends about it and they told you. You know, our moms a lot of the time did not have a lot of knowledge about makeup. Just the level of expertise was just not very high. It was pretty basic, pretty simple, and I think a lot of the looks reflect that. And ironically, it doesn't mean that they look bad. I still think the 90s does look kind of fresh. It's actually so stripped back and so simple. I think it's actually sometimes more sophisticated. Like just having that really dark lip color is serving a look. It is its own look, like dark lips on a matte face. Very easy to achieve as well. So yes, we didn't have a lot of ways to get at knowledge. We didn't know about contouring. You know, brushes seemed just way too advanced for us, or dirty, you know, frankly. And overall, it was just very simple, very easy, and very carefree. They were good times. You know, I do miss a lot of the 90s. There were a lot of problems with the 90s too, which I think that people like to have a lot of nostalgia about the good parts of the 90s. But the problem with the 90s, I will tell you as a teenage girl, was the rampant culture of fat phobia, and very problematic in the 90s. A lot of women that we consider to be normal now, I won't name any names because that's not what I'm trying to do here, but a lot of the women we would not bat an eyelash at now were considered fat back then. And if you go back and look at movies and where they're like laughing at people for being fat, you'll be surprised that these people are not fat that they're talking about, but that was fat in the 90s. Many of us, myself included, never felt that we were going to be the hot girl. We were just never skinny enough, right? The body ideal then was Kate Moss, Ally McBeal. And so those of us who did not conform, and that was another sort of big part of the 90s, body conformity. If you didn't have that body conformity, you were not that attractive, basically. So luckily we've made a lot of strides in that department. You know, we're not all the way there yet, but that was one of the really difficult parts of the 90s that I think gets kind of brushed under the rug quite a bit when people just sort of glamorize the makeup. It wasn't all about makeup, you know, like teenagers then, teenagers now. We had problems. They were just different problems than the ones that exist today. I'm dredging up memories that are quite old now. Like I am into my 40s now, so this was a long time ago, but it is fun to think about. Anyhow, I hope that you enjoyed these. Go ahead and watch another video from me, whether it be on, you know, a 90s makeup full tutorial or some of the other stuff that I was discussing here. I'll be sure to link those up. Thanks for watching.